So, how does the idea of setting an offshore record and being back in time for dinner grab you? Fancy that? Well, if it does, this could be just the boat for you. In the meantime, if you've been watching Planet Sail, you will probably know that we've run a couple of features about this boat and her blistering trips out to the Fastnet Rock and down to St Malo. This boat, and indeed her sister ships, have a bit of form when it comes to high-speed sailing offshore. Now, one person who knows quite a lot about that is PowerPlay's skipper, Ned Collier Wakefield.
I think VPLP, the designers, got it right. They put a little bit more emphasis into building a stronger boat compared to the Orma days. So the things are bulletproof. We can push them hard. You know, you go out there, you do one of these record attempts, or you go and smash it across the Atlantic, and you tie the thing up at the dock at the end of the day, wash it down, and it's pretty much done. Yeah, so I think they're pretty safe. You can push them really, really hard, and they're still quick, amazingly quick.
Yeah, they're clearly that. And the other thing that really strikes me about it is that it's 70 foot, and in the multi-hull world we've seen boats like Spindrift, 140 foot boat, which was Banque Populaire, wasn't it, originally, who had set the Fastnet record during the race. And yet it's twice the size of this boat, and yet the speed through the water, not handicap speed, the speed through the water of this boat is pretty close to Bank Pop or Spindrift. I mean, why is that? How can that be possible?
I think short course stuff for sure. I mean, get into a big sea state and they'll start to have the legs on us. But in flat water or sort of minimal sea state, the boats, they're quick. The latest record that we just did across the channel was pretty up there. Sun was out, nice breeze, like 26 knot easterly, pretty stable, and got down into the lee of the Cherbourg Peninsula and got the flat water there, and just were able to sit there at sort of 37 averages.
And how sketchy does that feel when you're going at that pace? Do you really feel that you're on the edge of losing it, or is it still pretty easy to control?
It's pretty stable. You want your guys on the triggers just in case, but it's in the flat water it's pretty good. It's when you start stuffing a bow in a sea state, that's when she kind of bites a little bit. As a helmsman, you've got the ability to release the main sheet and the traveller as well, so you've got quite a lot of controls around you. So you're sat there and you're sort of mic'd up to your trimmer, so you've got a good comms loop going there. You're pretty in control.
But what I didn't realise when we were editing the features about this boat and her two most recent campaigns was that there was another twist to the story. The bit of this story that I really like actually centres around PowerPlay's owner, Peter Cunningham here, because he's clearly a very young, fit guy and one of the crew, but actually his dark secret is he's a little bit older than he looks. Peter, I don't want to embarrass you about it, but how old are you?
I will be 80 in July.
That's pretty good going for this kind of boat. I think that'll take quite a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, took me by surprise.
Well,
turning 80 takes me by surprise, believe me.
Yeah, but I mean, let's kick off with how do you find the boat then? I mean, this is a pretty potent boat, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a physical boat, and you've got to get around. But the guys they look after me, make sure they don't lift me up and down or anything like that. But I think they keep an eye out, and again, you can't really tell. The worst part really is down below. Up above, it's not too much of a problem, and just got to be careful when the boat's really moving and hang on to something. Down below, the problem really is that the shaking, and I smashed my shoulder up. One of the things you do with the boat, which I hadn't really thought through, is that when it's really windy and you're going fast, they raise the leeward dagger board so that when a gust hits, instead of tipping more, you skip. And I was just standing by the ladder, taking my foul weather gear off, and and just all of a sudden the boat skipped, and the ladder just went bang, right into me. My shoulder went forward and tore the ligament over the top of the shoulder. So so you just have to be really careful. And what really now I'm always have 3 points of contact, is the rule, and just brace yourself carefully. So, but that could happen to anybody, really. But you do lose, when you get older, you lose a bit of your balance, a little bit of your agility. But on the other hand, if you stop doing things, then you really lose it. Yeah. It's like if you don't use it, you lose it type of thing. So to me, it's to try to keep going. Honestly, I don't really think about it. It's just, I just try to be a bit careful.
Yeah. So what drew you to this boat initially?
Very interesting, because I have these projects since I sold my company in, I think, 2010. I'd always wanted to do a bunch of big races, and I'd never done them. I was in San Francisco, did a lot of racing on the bay in a J29, and I'd done some chartering and raced with Chris Dixon for a week one time in a match racing, and so I'd done bits and pieces, but never really anything significant like the Transpac or Transatlantic or stuff like that. So anyway, I met this guy Tony Ray, who I think you know well, done 3 America's Cups, fantastic guy, and is really the person that has guided me in this whole process. And I kept seeing this advertisement for Concise in Seahorse. And I looked at it and I thought, it's interesting. So I talked to Tony Ray about it. And I said, what do you think, Tony? He said, well, go and have a look. So I came down here and saw this boat. I thought, wow, this really looks like Concise. It really looks like something. So I said, well, why not? Let's try it. Let's go. So that's how.
And has there been anything that surprised you, given what your expectations might have been before?
Yes, I'd say it's more exciting than I thought it was going to be.
Really?
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, it's
exciting in a good way.
Well, if you don't, it makes you afraid. So I think it was 2018 when we did the Middle Sea race, and I think that was the scariest race we've done, because we got hit by a cloudburst off of the volcano up north. The boat went from the wind went from 8 knots to 50 knots in a couple of minutes. We ripped the Genoa, and somebody had to pull the main release here, and I was down below, and all of a sudden I hear this roar. The boat started like being in an elevator. It just started to go up, just like being in an elevator, and I heard this roar. The main went out. Martin got his knife out and cut the Genoa sheet, which basically saved us. Yes, that was a pretty scary start. Yeah. So go 5 days, 6 days with 6 people on this size boat doing 30, 35 knots. Whoa, that's pretty, it's stressful on the people. So I think that was an unknown, really, when I went into it, is the relationship of the boat and the crew, and the demands that this boat puts on the crew. I think it's forgiving in some ways, but it requires you to know what you're doing, and in a way that on Manaha typically I don't think it does.
Is there stuff, it does sound like you've been quite bitten by the experience.
Yeah, I'll say that again.
And in a good way. Well, I meant it in a good way, but anyway.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's stuff that you've learned as a result of this that you are taking into your other sailing, because you were telling me earlier on about, you're sailing a J70, you quite like to do a Dragon. You're clearly very involved across a whole range of conventional, if I can call it that way, conventional boats in the sport.
Yeah. The appreciation for teamwork, I think, here is so important. Like when you're doing the J70, you've got to have teamwork, and you've got to have teamwork. But here, if you don't have teamwork, you're in real problem. You've got a really difficult thing. And there are a couple of times there were things that happened that the team really need to, like the microburst off Stromboli, the team had to operate in a way that was, I wouldn't say life-threatening, but certainly, would put everybody in a significant amount of danger. You don't have that in a J70 or a 52 or a Dragon. That's a different level of intensity. And so I think that that's something I've come away with, and then you have to learn how to deal with that.
I wonder if it also helps, albeit subconsciously, helps you to put things into perspective when things get a little bit out of shape on the J70 or TP50 or whatever it is, and you're a bit more relaxed about it, without really knowing that you're more relaxed. But
that's a very good point, because the last year, we've had like being on the Dragons. I remember we got hit by a 30-knot puff off Cascais in a place where the Dragon had sunk actually a year or so earlier. So even though it was a real bang, it was like, okay, I can handle this. It's not panic type of thing, and this is, just something we can deal with it. And I think the same on the J70s too. You get ill very easily here. Like any other boat, I don't take seasick pills, but you really got to take seasick pills. Oh yeah. In fact, the last race, the Fastnet we did, one of the problems we had was that we had 5 or 6 of us were sick. A couple were sick for almost the whole time. And we hadn't done a good job of managing that and making sure that everybody before we went out had taken their pills. Because a lot of people say, "Oh, I never get sick." Of 8 of us, only 2 really didn't get sick. Ned was one, and John didn't. But even they weren't going down below. Nobody was going below, and at certain points, because you're going to be ill. And this includes Paul Larson and Miles, and I mean, so you really that's something when you're going out and we had the same situation when we did the transatlantic at the start. We went really violent seas. I had taken my pills and I ended up being pretty well okay. So yeah, that's this whole dimension to this that you've got to be. We haven't done as good a job yet as we should have done, and going forward, we're going to have the pill pushing time the night before.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've had an incredible ride, so to speak, over the last 3 years. But
Yeah.
I hear that you're actually selling the boat.
Yeah, it's well, I say I do projects. Like the 52 is a project. I did some other chartering. It's kind of like a project. The difficulty, though, Matt, is it's going to be really hard to find a project after this, because I haven't hit 40 knots yet. My objective is I'm not going to sell it till I've hit 40 knots. So that means they're not going to let me go when it's likely to be.
When you say hit 40 knots with you on the helm?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So the thing is, when it's going to be 40, they all go on the helm.
Yeah.
They say, Pete, no, but the problem then is that's the time when things get, especially in the seas. Like this last time, Fastnet, I said to Paul, "Hey, Paul, could I have a drive for a bit?" And he looked at me and he said, "Pete," he said, "it's a bit difficult right now." And because we had a cross sea, we're doing 30-odd knots, you had a cross sea. And so when you went up on the wave, and you get up the top, now you're exposed, essentially. So you get hit. So he said, he was having to... He said a couple of times he had the helm hard over and nothing was happening. So it didn't look hard, but it was apparently it was just because of the angles. It was very, very difficult sailing. So anyway, it was, yeah. And I always have a minder.
Well, I guess also that when the world's fastest man tells you it's a bit tricky now, you probably think, okay. Point taken.
No problem. No problem. Yes, but so it's for sale, but they have to have a very, very good offer to me.
Now, it's all very well having a boat that'll do 35, 40 knots at times, but you do actually need to look after it and maintain it. And that comes down to this man here, Martin Watts.
I look at the boat really, and I look at it as it's kind of like a TP52 with 2 bits strapped to the outside. You know, when you look at it, the winches are not huge, there's not masses to service, and as long as you keep on top of it, it's a great piece of kit.
And what are the kind of things that you have to do to maintain a boat like this? What are the key elements of maintenance?
The winches, obviously, just to make sure we don't have an accident, and we do push them probably to their absolute limit now that we strap the 3DI sails to them. I think probably in the past it wasn't so bad, and SK99 is obviously a new rope, so that everything's being not overloaded but loaded to its maximum. So yeah, the winches and the hydraulics, every 6 months we make sure they're good. Obviously they hold the rig up, and the connecting strops, maybe you can still see them down here off the ram. Every 6 months we have to change them just through wear and tear, and other than that it's day-to-day general maintenance, making sure everything keeps moving.
So if you fancy going out there and smashing a few records, or just sailing flat out for the hell of it, well, PowerPlay could be the boat for you. And contrary to what you might write in a car ad, this boat has been raced and rallied and pushed hard, but she's also had several very satisfied owners.